Welcome to the show today. Today I have Dominique Schmid on the show with me, and he's the head of innovation and technology management at St. Clara Hospital. Very excited to talk to you, Dominique, today. So let's go right into the story that's behind Dominique and behind kind of like where we arrived today. So can you maybe share one or two sentences about yourself, and then also talk a little bit about maybe there was a defining moment in your life or a defining period in your life that really shaped you as a person and as a leader?
Hello, Daniel. Yes, with pleasure I do that. So I'm now here in this hospital for about a year. In the past, I worked in different industries, also in technology industries. So I'm glad I'm now in a very complex world in this hospital environment. Defining moments in my past have been, of course, very key always education. I was glad to make the Rochester Byrne Executive MBA, which was a very good and sound basis after my studies at the University of Bern. And then what is always very important is to work with good people and have good opportunities. So I was glad to be very active in M&A in the .NET times, which was a wonderful playground. A lot of playing was also done there. So this is one of my really experience there to build up companies, to sell and buy companies. Then I was CEO also for a high-tech company for the SICAP, and with Swiss Post Solutions, I was working in all different countries of this world, also in Asia, also in Africa. And then I also had wonderful projects and good jobs, good sounding opportunities, which finally have been what I am today. And I think key at the end, people.
Maybe let's stay there for a second on the topic of people, because that's always something that interests me. Have there been some like specific people or specific groups of people along the way that really shaped you?
Very difficult questions. I think there are many people which shaped me. Also many discussions I had with customers, with partners. I also had a couple of very difficult people I had to handle, also bosses I was not very happy with, and I did learn a lot from them also, because then you learn what you probably don't want to copy or what you don't want to do. But let me just name a couple of very impressive leaders I had the opportunity to work with. I think Carsten Schloter is one of them. We just had the offices one next to the other when I was working at Swisscom Mobile. Jens Alder also, very impressive manager for me. Adrian Bult, he is very active still here in Switzerland. Dominique Köchlin, who unfortunately isn't with us anymore. Also Dave Schnell, who is a board director, very well known in Switzerland. So these are a couple of people I could work closely together, and I learned enormously from them.
Very, very good. I mean, I love always when people point out specific people, because it's just also also the thing that you mentioned in terms of the great people you dealt with, but sometimes also the difficult people. The point that it mentioned is sometimes you can learn also from what you do not want to embrace. That's a really interesting one. Now let's take a step back into your childhood. What kind of dreams did you have as a child? Do you remember any of them? Did you always want to become a head of IT, a CIO, or like where do you have any memories of that?
Of course I have, yes. No, I never dreamed as a child to become a CIO of a hospital, in fact. Although my parents were doctors, so I had some relation to that. Now, I was a real child, so I always enjoyed what I was doing. So not that much of a dreamer, I have to say. I really wanted to do it, to play football, to make sports, to be around, and I always was I put it a lot of energy in what I was actually doing. So, well, one of the dreams I then had, that's about music. So I also studied in music. I'm still a guitar player. I play every day, which helps me a lot. Since I am 6 years old, I'm practicing judo and jiu-jitsu, and I still do that today. So I'm not sure what I have to answer. Probably it's because I'm still a child, so I'm still doing the same things. So I still enjoy, I still do the things. I'm not that much of a dreamer, I have to say.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I love what you said. You know, I'm probably still a child today and do these kinds of things. I mean, I think that kind of like awareness of understanding also, you talked a lot about play, you know, before. You talked a lot about play in the M&A and the .com, talked a lot about play as a child, you know, still obviously in play. Play has a lot to do with everything you're involved in. And that's a very interesting way of looking at the world as well, because sometimes we take ourselves so incredibly seriously, and it doesn't really help much most of the time. And that's just such a beautiful way of looking at the world. And I want to stay with that focus, you know, on passion, what you mentioned for a second. So you mentioned your parents have been doctors, and that may have been influencing also your choices in life in terms of also where you ended up today. In terms of like passion and kind of like what's behind, what's the reason that you decided to go from this, you know, high tech, very like fast paced, very always at the, you know, cutting edge of the cutting edge, private industry as well, into a sector that I know the hospital is private, but also the sector is very often not as incredibly fast paced as, you know, the high tech world, you know. So what inspired you to join this sector, and what inspires you still today to wake up every morning?
Well, I think key are the people you are working with, and playing is well, exactly the right word. You know, to be innovative, you have to play a little bit. You have to try things. You have to be open-minded. You have to some sort of everything is permitted, at least at the beginning. Of course, if you just play, then you just play and you can endlessly play. So you have to have some sort of a structure also. And now to make a hospital, being a digital hospital, means you have to find a lot of innovative solutions for things which in the past did never work, and now you have to overcome this. And you have to motivate the people and bring them together as a team. So they have to think, they have to be open, they have to be a little bit more creative. I have to allow that, and so the culture has to change a little bit. So they come up with solutions, but at the same time, you also have to have a good structure behind in order then to fulfill and not just to play around. So it's these two things you have to manage, and that's what always was interesting. Also in the high-tech company, when I was in the telco industry on the cutting edge technologies with value-added services and all these things, which really were very interesting. Actually, if you have the team, then you can work on a hospital as well as on a cutting-edge technology in telecoms. Of course, you have to have the specialists of the industries on board also, and to know what you are doing at the end. But the setting is the same, I would say. You have to bring the company having the same setting, and that's the key.
I love how you look at leadership not as a specialized field, so to say, but leadership more as a way of being, because that way of being you can bring into a hospital, into high tech, into whatever. And of course, you always have to deal with different kinds of people, different kind of specialists, but at the end of the day, the principles do not change. That's a very interesting point of view. We're going to go back to that in a second as well. But one thing I want to jump on is the digital hospital. This is something that really excited me last time we talked. This is a very interesting thing. So what excites you about this? Like, why are you so, this is something that you've mentioned a few times last time. So why are you so passionate about transforming this hospital into a digital hospital?
Mm-hmm. Well, a hospital is here to make people healthy again. That's the only focus we have, if you want to put a focus on a hospital. And today, a lot of energy is needed just to bring information through the system. And this information is typed in many times, printed out on paper, and then typed in another system, and so on. And I think all this energy should be used to help the patient and not to help the system just work. And that's what is the patient behind the hospital, the digital hospital, really. You just give in an information once, and then you can help the patient. And the more automated this information is available in a system, because the different devices talk to each other, the results are already typed in your clinical information system, and so on and so on. The faster you have all this information together, and the doctors really can focus on the patient and not on the data and data entry and do I have in every system all the information now. So that's the patient behind. Help our people to really focus on our patients and make them healthy again. That's what is a digital hospital for me.
I love, how you relate this to the actual impact, to the actual purpose of a hospital. You didn't say any kind of corporate buzzwords or any kind of, all these kinds of things. It's all about the purpose of the hospital and serving that purpose better, basically. That's at the end of the day really what it is. And I think that clarity and the kind of vision and the kind of purpose is so powerful. And we're going to go to that, I think, a little bit in the conversation about leadership. But before we go there, along this journey that you had with M&A, high tech, selling, buying, leading, building, scaling, whatever, innovating, there's probably been some interesting stories along the way where you learned, one or two lessons. And there's probably been one or two failure stories and probably one or two success stories. Can you tell us maybe one or two of those stories that you want to share along the way that really made an impression on you and then that really taught you something important?
Yes. Difficult to put them in failures or in winning, successful stories. I think all stories I had in the past, I could learn a lot from, and they always had an impact. So if impact is a success, then the failure is not there. I think I have more positive and more questionable results I did. One of them, for example, was in the Swisscom time when we wanted to put a new product in the market where we could compete against the low price product offerings in the market. And actually, if you are in a rather higher priced company, then this is difficult also from a cultural point of view, because your people around you are not thinking low price. They are thinking high quality. And that was quite a challenging project. So first, all the people around me said, we can do that. We are the best. We don't need any other partners. Of course, we needed partners. And then we found also a perfect partner, Migros in Switzerland, which is a big retailer here. And they had a perfect brand. They had a budget brand, which is perfect for low price. Actually, they have all their goods now with an budget branding point. And then I really had to pick a couple of people, bring them out of their today's environment, bring them together in a separate building. I had them buying all the budget products we needed in order to fill the project. You can imagine also the chocolate and the mineral water was branded and budget. And then suddenly we had this feeling around us, and we could then also produce the product. So this is a wonderful project where we really combined knowledge and culture, and then we were successfully launching budget as the first virtual network operator in Switzerland. It's still today the biggest offering in the Swiss market, the prepaid budget offering. That was wonderful. I have other stories also abroad when we, for example, in Bangladesh introduced callback for mobile operating. That was a huge success, probably not as we first anticipated, but then people over there could use their cell phones even if they did not have any credit on it anymore because the order was paying. And then they started, to phone home. So if you let it ring 2 times, it means I'm late. If it rings 5 times, that means I'm just coming home, and things like that. So this was then challenging also for the network. But I think, communication increased. That's what this wonderful project also. And probably one of the bigger mistakes we made in the past, in the 90s, I think all operators did it. We did underestimate the user interface. So all mobile operators were running after services. You have the latest services, the soccer results, and whatever services. But actually what did win the race at the end was the user interface, and the big today known companies which offer a good experience if you have a device in your hand and not the service which is behind, which is of course coming from the internet. So we did underestimate that. I think the whole industry did do that. And probably we also made a couple of other strategic, sometimes take the wrong turn in order to make the strategic movements we did. So we probably should have kept in the past our development intelligence in prepaid billing. We outsourced this, and this was not the best decision. So if you have knowledge, then you should keep that knowledge in-house. That is one of the learnings. So that's from business side, and then from people side, there are successes and not so successful stories too. So I also used to choose the wrong boss in the past once. That's not how you can be successful. So either you know each other good, have trust, and can work together. And if not, then, you can have the most interesting project, and it's hard to be successful.
I find it very fascinating. I mean, many points in there. Let me just pick 2. The first one is the joint venture between a telecoms company and a grocery store, basically, yes. Right? I mean, that today, think about it today in Switzerland, everybody goes like, yeah, of course, right? But back then, come up with this idea and people go like, what do you mean? Like why on earth would anybody ever do something like that? Like, that's just horrendous. But then if you look at the impact that it created, and of course, also the profits that it created and the reach and everything, it's incredible. And that just once again shows, when we talk about innovation and talk about new things and talk about new creations, a telecoms operator doing this with a telecoms operator, or within an organization within a similar or the same industry, probably wouldn't have had that kind of an impact. And it's very interesting when it comes to innovation of how powerful these cross organization, of course, but then even cross way further, cross the ocean collaboration ways. Things like that are so impactful. That's one thing that I got out of this. The other thing is when it comes to people, choosing the wrong boss. This is very interesting. I think most people would have said choosing the wrong talent, choosing the wrong people to work with or something like that. You specifically said choosing the wrong boss. I think most people don't even know that they can choose their boss. I think most people think their boss is just given to them. And I find that really interesting in terms of choice. Mm-hmm. Because, of course, we can debate it at the end of the day. But let's be honest, everybody has a choice to say yes or no, of course, with the consequences and everything that comes with it. But I think that in and of itself is a very, very interesting lesson. Choose your boss carefully. I really like that one. Because even if you're an entrepreneur, you have a boss. Even if, it doesn't matter if it's, I think the worst boss to choose for yourself is yourself. Because then you're really stuck inside. And I think the great thing about today's world is that we have a much better way of choosing our boss. And even, whatever that may be, I think that's a really interesting one that I got there. Now, let's talk a little bit about leadership. So you run a pretty large organization within this hospital, and the hospital itself is a massive organization. So how are you able to be in charge of such a big organization and stay sane at the same time?
Well, in fact, this organization I had today is much smaller than the organizations I run in the past. So, I'm getting a little bit older, and I'm reducing a little bit, well, let's say the traveling, at least the traveling between the continents and countries, which really is challenging, I think. And of course, beside what you are doing every day on business, you need to have something else to open up your mind and relax. And for me, this is music and sports, as I said. And since my childhood, I have this passion. I still play in a band. I played in many different bands, also from jazz to rock music. In fact, actually, I'm in a funk band, funk and soul band with horns, and I play the guitar. And this is a lot of fun, and this helps, of course, to be okay then also on this. Well, let me just say two things about choices. I think everything in the life is a choice, and I think in the past, my grandfather, probably also my father, they thought I have to get a good job, and then I stay there until I'm 65 years old, and that's what I do. In fact, my father, he had his own cabinet, so he didn't do that choice, but a lot of people in the past did do that. And I think the future is about choosing the right, let's say, project or the right setting in order to overcome a situation. And if you are good, for example, in changing things, if you are a change manager from nature, and you can bring your passion into a team, so this team is changing and the company wants that, then you are really the one who should do that. Then you have fun doing that. Choosing the wrong boss is if you are the change manager, the company have goals where you have to change the company really. And once you start working, everything you do is not okay. And the goal is not there. And the whole thing should work as it did in the past, but actually the result should be very different. And then it becomes quite difficult. And then, you learn that probably the person who you trusted in is helping you to change everything, doesn't want to change, and has some sort of political pressure, in order to just market the change, but doesn't really want to do it, and so on. And I also experienced that. And then, you come into a situation where you cannot form the team, and you cannot the moves you need to do in order to become, for example, scaling in a environment of IT where every country has its own operations. You have to bring them together, for example, in order to scale. And things like that, these are learnings then, and I think you then have the only choice to leave and take another opportunity where you can fulfill what you do. And doing that and being aware of this keeps you healthy also, because then you are doing what you love, you bring your power into what you can do, and you can move and change things. That's what I do. I mean, there are other people who probably rather would not change everything every day what they are doing. So there are other jobs around like that, of course. And it's a question of choices. And to choose your boss is very important, probably more important than to choose the right people you work with, because there you have also the power to change the team if it doesn't work.
This is very interesting once again. So many things. The two things that really stuck with me is the first one. It reminds me, when you talked about music and talked about sports, reminds me of a question that they asked Richard Branson. They said, like, how are you able to run 400 companies at the same time? And he said, well, it's simple, workout. Well, of course it's simplified, but it's this entire idea of, well, there's going to be something else as well, because if you're stuck inside, you're limited. But if you're able to get outside, you're unlimited, because suddenly there's no roof anymore. There's no edges anymore. Suddenly everything's the view is abundant, and that's a very interesting one there. And the second one is choose your boss carefully, but also the entire everything that comes with a boss, the organization, the alignment, the vision, the goal of the company, the strategy of the company, the management team. In terms of that, what I got from that really is choose your environment carefully. Because if you have a path that you naturally go in your life, and you pick an environment, whatever that environment may be, that is not in alignment with that, it's going to be really difficult to fulfill that purpose and really move along that path in a healthy way. That's what I got from this one. So quickly staying on that topic of leadership, if we look at leadership as a way of being, and we had to condense it into its essence, what would you say leadership means to you personally?
For me personally, what is important that you have a couple of strong values for you. One of my strong values is a very simple one. If you just name it, it's just do the right things. I mean, doing the right things, that's easily said and it doesn't mean a lot. But if you ask yourself always, did I do the right things? Can I look into the mirror in the evening and say, I would do this decision again exactly like that? Well, just try. But probably you find out that you say, oh no, there I didn't say what I think because I didn't want to have the discussion, or I didn't want to point out that I disagree because everybody agreed, and things like that. So do that carefully, and I can assure you, you feel also healthy after that, because you know that you did the right things. But I also can assure you that it doesn't always help you on your career path, because you probably then also one or the other time you point out things you are thinking which are not helping exactly everybody to agree that you did the good things in their eyes. But it helps you. So that's strong values I think you have to have. And do that also with a little bit of I mean, finger feeling, huh? So it's not that I argue all the time, but just name. Well, I would think that this and this aspect also could be looked at, and I think this is more important than the other things, and that's it. So values are one that the leader should show, and this then also for all the people around gives a certain assurance that well, this is a person who says what he thinks, he's right, he has a vision, he puts it in his context, and then these people also, of course, have to feel that you listen and that you change your mind if the arguments are good. And I think it's the best discussion you can have with an employee or with your boss or with anyone is that you have a point of view, he has a point of view, and in the end you have both a different point of view that you had at the beginning of the discussion, and then you learned. And this attitude should be there. I hate leaders which just come in and say, I know what is right and I go this way, and everybody who doesn't think like that is not good and doesn't fit to our companies. You have to be open-minded on this. And this is another value. So listen to people and elaborate solutions together. And if you have an environment and a culture is around like that, then people like to work with you. They like to work in your company. They love it. They are motivated. And then it's also a basic understanding about motivation. All the people who work here in this hospital, they like to work here. They are fully motivated. So we just have to look a little bit that we don't demotivate them. So that's it. So motivation is a basic thing which is here. They wouldn't be here. They wouldn't choose to work here if they wouldn't be motivated. So do you have just to take this motivation and create and make an environment so they really feel passionate about what they do. And the motivation is here. And this is, once you start and do these things, so it becomes faster and faster, turning positively. And that's what this leadership all about. And you are a part of it as a leader. You are not, this hierarchical thinking where you are on the top. That's not true. Most of the times I'm in discussions where the specialists really know what you have to do now. And you just have to make the decision because they probably not, they don't feel empowered to now take the decision. They make proposals. You have to listen to them and then work with these proposals and make the things happen. That's what I'm doing. So it's coach. To be the coach, probably not the player on the soccer ground, so it's the coach role. That's what leadership is for me.
It's really amazing how you're able to simplify this and how deep this goes when you talk about it, because this is not about strategy. This is about values. This is so interesting because I think most or many leaders out there, managers out there would say, well, people align behind the strategy, but well, they don't. They align behind shared values. And what you basically said is, or what I heard is that one of the key values that you have is that thing that you call doing the right thing, and standing up for that thing, standing up for that, doing the right thing. That is leadership. That is at the essence leadership, and it's much more to do with self-leadership than with management. And at least that's what I heard. And that's what I find really interesting, because then you're suddenly no longer complicating everything with trying to manage an outside and external and here and this, but you're understanding that the way you show up and the way you act and the way you walk through life and through your business day, that's determining the outcomes and the behaviors and whatever happens around. I find that incredibly fascinating. That's the key thing that I heard from this. So last question is a bit up in the clouds one. If you had a magic wand, so you're a magician now, and you had a magic wand and you could wave that magic wand and wish for anything you wanted in the world, what would be the thing that you wished for that could impact or that could multiply your impact 10 times at least on your organization, on your industry, on the world?
Well, the magic wand, that's a little bit about dreaming. And well, as I said, the dreaming is, well, it's not doing. I'm rather the person who does things. But I think if behavior could be changed as easily as learning just a foreign language, that would change the world a lot. I mean, if cognitive learning with us would be an easy task, at least for a couple of people, then we could move forward extremely fast. I mean, then, you know, the most agile companies, we would just laugh at them, because they always have to overcome also this change of behavior if they have to change any processes in the world. And believe me, this is very difficult, very difficult. So, for example, a doctor who just signs with his pen something, and then he has to start to use an electronical signature, that's changing his world. So easy things on behavioral learning is for us human beings so difficult. I think if I would have a magic hand or wand, then I will put this on there, and then, you know, you just can pick that whenever you need it, and all of a sudden your behavior changes in the right way, and then you just do it automatically. That would be a very, very wish from me. And this is coming back probably of my psychological studies I did in the past. That's really the difficult thing.
It's really interesting, because this is something obviously that is today's probably biggest challenge, or has always been the biggest challenge in transformation, in change, in anything. It's not the technology, it's not the structure, it's not the Excel sheets, it's people, it's behaviors, it's culture, it's what's ingrained in people. And this is a very interesting one. Really, really great. Thank you so much, Dominique, for being on the show. We're going to link to some of the resources below. We're going to link to your LinkedIn profile. We're going to link to the website as well, so people can also stay up to date what's happening, what's going on. Also get in touch, check out what kind of opportunities there are with Claraspital, but also keep in touch with you. So thank you so much for being on the show, Dominique.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a pleasure.